Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Laurent Burin-Desrosiers. I'm the director of the French Institute, and I'm very glad to welcome you tonight at the Ciné Lumière for a very special evening. It is indeed a great honor for us to welcome the French cellist Sonia Vida-Atherton this evening. She is here tonight to introduce three of her creations that she will present in the context of a residence at King's Place on 17th, 18th, 19th March, Jewish songs, Vita and Est in music. She will also introduce her new CD, Vita. Sonia is not only an exceptionally talented and versatile musician, but also creates and performs her own projects with experience and originality. Her music is deeply rooted in the classical music tradition, but she's an eclectic artist who is open to influences from contemporary music to different types of traditions as well as Baroque. In a way, Sonia's universe is open to many kinds of artistic fields, from literature to cinema. Sonia Vida-Atherton is undeniably one of the most dynamic musical personalities of our times, and this talk will be a unique opportunity to learn from her. Let me also let you know that this talk is being filmed, and you will be able to find it from next week on the Institut Français digital platform CultureTech. This event has been made possible thanks to the support of our generous donors, and I take this opportunity to thank them warmly once again for their support. I hope you will enjoy this event and that you will soon after book tickets for Sonia's concert at King Place. And now I will call on the stage Sonia Vida-Atherton, and I will ask you to give her a warm applause.
Good evening, everybody. Very, very warm welcome to the Institut Français, and a huge welcome for Sonia Vida-Atherton, who, as Laurent has explained so eloquently, is one of the most creative and exciting musicians of our day. I think not only on the cello, but on any instrument. Sonia, welcome to the Institut Français.
Thank you.
We're all looking forward to your concerts next week. And I think the plan is to talk about each of the projects in turn. They're incredibly varied, but unified by Sonia's great interest and devotion to widening the cello repertoire. So the pieces that she's created for chant juif and the chant d'Est, the transcriptions, which we'll come to in more detail, will now be there for cellists to draw on. The cello, I always think, Sonia, is one of the most beautiful instruments ever created, but the repertoire does need enlarging when you compare it to, say, the piano repertoire, where you have 32 Beethoven sonatas and infinite numbers of Haydn and Mozart.
Yeah, it's terribly unfair. But one must say that the cello is younger, has a younger... let's say life as an instrument that tells stories, and I would say that Casals is the one who began to bring the cello to that place, like who really can play pieces with a leading voice, and so Casals it's very recent. And there still is a lot of beautiful pieces, repertoire very interesting with jumps in modern music, old music. And probably, but that's something in all instruments, people tend to play always the same thing or say, we won't put that on a program because the public will not come, which I'm sure is not true. It's really what people think, that they have to repeat. So for a repertoire like the cello, of course, it's more a problem than for other instruments. But there's a lot, more than what we think. But
Exactly.
Still, there could be more.
Yeah. Now, Chant Juif is going to be the first of the three concerts. I was fascinated to read about how you went about discovering these very beautiful traditional melodies. And I understand that you found traces of the same melodies popping up in different corners of the Jewish world, really, only developed differently in different areas.
Yeah, that was terribly interesting. It was, first of all, I should say that it's Hasidic liturgic music, which is quite special. It's not klezmer, it's not the feast music, it's not what we play in weddings, or it's really the liturgic music, but linked to that Hasidic movement, which is very special. It's somebody called the Baal Shem Tov, who did almost a revolution in the Jewish world by saying it shouldn't be too serious. It shouldn't be the life of a Jew, a religious Jew, shouldn't be that serious. They should be dancing, they should be singing, they should be even fights with God, say that we don't agree. And so from his what he let's say he broke a lot of quite strict rules. The music went and was one of the first let's say leader to help that movement. So that music is very particular. It's called Hasidic music, and it's and so it has traveled all over Europe and Central Europe. And so it's true, I heard somebody singing a theme that I recognized, and then in somewhere else I heard the end that I recognized but was developed differently. And then I found the theme of that song in a library in Paris. But half of it I saw in another library. So I could really feel how that music had traveled a lot. And probably because it was part of the everyday life of a lot of people.
And there's something, I think, about the timbre of the cello that particularly suits these rather, I hesitate to say mournful, but perhaps soulful is a better word. The quality of a synagogue cantor singing or chanting, as the case may be, in that sort of very expressive baritone. I think the cello is perhaps the closest that you can get to that without actually being a singer.
Yeah, it's true that the cello can be very close, but more and more I travel in those, let's say, musical different universe. More I think that any instrument can be very close to the voice. It's really a question of how one plays the instrument. But for example, I heard the duduk, which is a Armenian oboe. It's really more like a voice than any cello, or even a Egyptian flute sounds like the old man's voice, or even piano can really. It depends. I think it's all a question of imagination.
Exactly.
All a question of imagination. Because I heard cello that are beautifully played, but it doesn't sound vocal like a voice. So I think it's really what the musician wants to, what sound he has in his inner universe, and he gives to the instrument, I think.
So with Chant Juif as a concert program, I think it's the first half of the concert, isn't it? Is there a particular pattern to that journey that you have evolved through the sequence of pieces? Is there a progression of
after
the emotion?
The intermission, or
in the Chant Juif themselves?
No, there are the texts. There are some texts that I have written, that I read, and it's really one atmosphere.
So it's several pieces, but in a oneness, as you could say.
Yes.
And the second half,
the second half is something. It's difficult to continue after that, because it's very dense, and to finally, I thought that the most important, or probably what I wanted, was to continue with intimate storytelling, that kind of music. So I decided, and I tried, and I thought something that really worked was storytelling, but from South America. So I chose 3 South American composers because it's also music that is part of life all the time, but with a relation to rhythm that is, of course, different than in the Jewish songs. But it's 3 stories, very strong stories. In Piazzolla, Monsalvatore, and Salgan, there's a tango. There is La Ballade d'un Fou, une ballade for un fou, for a mad. And the words are absolutely incredible, of somebody standing in the street and looking at the sky and seeing suddenly things going so fast, and he wants to join that sky, and suddenly he says, but I'm here and I can't move. So it's the story of that man. And then the third is a cradle song for a little negrito from Monsalvatore. And then we finish by the Britten Sonata, which probably will sound strange to you, but in a very difficult, probably reason. It's difficult to explain why, but I think that Britten, in his sonata, it's 5 movements where there's a dialogue, as the conversation of the Jewish songs. There's an elegy, as in the Jewish songs. There's rhythmical bowings that are really almost like tango or jazz. And it's as if with his genius of composer, he was taking Britten in his arms all the themes and all the stories that were told from the beginning of the concert. So that's why we finish by Britten.
Now, you've brought along one of the texts for the piece that we are going to hear.
Mm-hmm.
This one is called Prayer. A tightrope walker climbs up on his wire. He carries with him the hubbub of daily life. Little by little, he pulls free from it and advances. He sways to the left, straightens up, then sways to the right and straightens up once again. He pauses, advances a step or two, makes use of his pole, finds his balance. He, the wire and space, are but one. It is a moment of unison. The tightrope walker has created an area that is independent of measured time. He hears the voices of those who are below, but also voices that he is alone to hear. They crisscross and even chat between themselves. All is fluid. He hollows out every second that passes, but has no fear of his end. Since everything has come together, he advances. He has reached the other side. He drops to the ground. He has finished praying. The element of storytelling that has come into the Chant Juif program and CD is very much a theme in your work generally. And I think you've carried it even one stage further with the next project, Vita, which brings together the music of Claudio Monteverdi from the Italian Renaissance with the music of the recent, it's 10 years ago that he died, the recent Italian composer Scelsi. And I understand that you've created a character somewhat influenced by magical realism to bind together the story of a life, both in the Renaissance and in the 20th century.
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell us something about how you did that?
Well, it came, it's many, how do you say this, many, sorry? Layers. That bring me to something like that. For example, in this case, I had already begun work on Monteverdi, and then I discovered this trilogy by Scelsi. I really fell in love in that piece. It's a 40 minutes piece for cello solo that Scelsi named The Three Ages of Man. He wanted to tell the story of a person in 3 chapters: youth, maturité, and old age. And it's so fascinating. This composer, for me, has such a strong imagination. He wrote in, he was improvising on an instrument that was probably just before the computer, and he played for hours until he found exactly what he was looking for, and then he would edit it and so that the piece would exist recorded, and then he would give it to young composers who would write it in a musical language, and then he would work again with them to be the closer he could to what he wanted to obtain. And he invented in that piece a special mute that I'm going to show you, that for me immediately it made me think of the distortion of sound of Jimi Hendrix. It's a metallic surdine mute that is like that, you see, with metal, little metal pieces of de plomb, des boules de plomb. Well, you can see. It's quite heavy, and so it hits the string by the vibration, and it gives that metallic sound that he uses in the middle of the cello. That is l'adolescence, the moment of adolescence. The same word, no? Yes. Where there is, or there can be, that violence, because I think that the light and the life in l'adolescence can be very violent. Because it's the moment where everything is so serious, the decisions are so crucial. Everything is question of death or life in l'adolescence. And then in the third chapter, we go slowly let's say the movements are slower of the player. And for the last movement, he asked the player to completely untune the cello, but so much that it's impossible to do it, for example, on my cello, because the cello is completely kaput for a month. So I have to have another cello, and I won't tell you the story because it will take 2 hours, how I found somebody who could build a mute like that, because it's not, you can't buy it, it's in Scelsi's, he wrote in the music, I would like something like that, so I like people like that, because I mean, it's, first of all, I find it fascinating, and it brings new sounds to us. And I will just tell you a story about the third chapter, that is the old age. I couldn't find the way of playing it, because he asked the vibrato to be very slow. Everything has to be really very slow, and even the crossing of the strings, and I was playing it, but I thought it's not it. And then I heard director Jean-Luc Bondy, you know, probably some of you know him, talk about a play by UNESCO that is called Les Chaises, that is about old age. And Bondy said that he asked all his actors to slow down their movements, to les décomposer. How do you say décomposer? Decompose the gestures. And he said, for example, that it shouldn't be, I'm taking a glass of water, but, oh, there is a glass of water. I'm going to take a glass of water. And he worked with his actors to find that tempo of decomposition of everything. And I thought, that's what I have to find in that piece of Scelsi. To really find that, to have the rhythm of even the heart goes slower. And suddenly sounds, magical sounds began to come out of the cello. So that's about Scelsi. And so you understood how much he's linked with life, with the energy of sound, with the energy of life, and even the energy of old age. And Monteverdi, he was obsessed by the same thing, by life, by how to express in music the more emotions he could even imagine. And he wrote, I found how he writes that in music that does not exist a way of expressing somebody who goes to fight. He says, we know how to express sadness, we know, but I want to find a way of expressing what happens in somebody's interior secret world, what happens when he goes to fight. So he was obsessed also by how to tell life stories in music. And so that's why, of course, there are two geniuses, but that's why for me in that project, Vita, they gave hands to each other. Yeah. It's through life.
I often feel that Monteverdi sounds almost more contemporary than some contemporary composers.
Absolutely.
Because there's such invention and such actual violence sometimes in
yes.
his works. It's as if there's nothing he won't do in order to express that emotion.
Yes, and he says also in his introductions of pieces, he says, in a very ampoulé way, very more than polite, no. Like this, he says, don't be too severe, don't be strict, because to repeat what has been done is something easy, and to invent is much more difficult. So he knew very well that he was taking risks in inventing new forms of sounds. I wouldn't even say music, but before music, sounds.
How have you gone about transferring Monteverdi's vocal music to the cello?
Well, it's a work that is in again en strates, different chapters of work, let's say. And first of all, it's with the music. It's a choice of who will do what, which line we will keep, what we have to let on the side. And then after, there's a great work, of course, with the cello, of finding in the way of playing, in the bow technique, in the vibrato relationship between the bow and the left hand, a way of speaking. In the first Monteverdi madrigal that maybe we will hear, I found in the transcription something. It's the story of a young girl who is in love, and she has never talked about it. And for the first time, she's saying it. So she's very afraid of probably of what she will feel in that loneliness of suddenly saying something that was kept secret. So what I did is I have two cellists with me. I forgot to say all the madrigals are for two cellos and bass, or two main voices, two cellos who play the voices, and no, sorry, I said twice the same. Either two main voices and a bass, either as what we will hear, the one I talked about, is with one main voice and 2 that are is accompagne. They accompagne. And so I one of the cello I asked to play in a very low register, and the other one higher than me. And so it's as if they were drawing a space in which me, saying the story, I can sing and, let's say, tell the story. But it's almost like a theater play. They give me a space and I can't go higher, I can't go lower. One is above, one is underneath. That's the choice I have done.
Well, sure. I think we have a bit of your CD to listen to, which will demonstrate this. I've become increasingly fascinated by your specially commissioned mute. And I was wondering if you would show us how it works. Right, so it fits over the bridge of the cello. It really is an amazing sound. It's almost as if the cello is rattling a chain and sort of champing at the bit, trying to get out and be released from something. Yeah. So I don't know if very much rattling of chains went on when you were studying in Moscow, but I think that it was really your attraction to Moscow and your long-standing fascination with the particular playing style that you found in cellists from that very distinguished tradition, of whom I guess Rostropovich is the most famous example. That has brought you on to the next part of your project, which is called Chant d'Est.
D'Est en musique.
D'Est en musique.
Chant d'Est is another one. D'Est en musique, yeah. It's this came from what I felt when I saw those images of a film by Chantal Ackerman called D'Est, and that I find is like an elegy with images. She went in Russia, Poland, Czechoslovakia before the end of communism, and she filmed like this, very without explaining, without interviews, just with what was happening in the country, in the streets, people waiting for buses, people in lines, a lot of people waiting, because when you go in those countries under communism, people give the impression that they wait, that their destiny is in the hands of something that they have no way to control, and they wait. They wait with luggages, they wait for buses, they wait for food, they wait. But when you enter then, and you go beyond that, you find really people who have very often, or where everything is alive even more than people who don't wait. Everything is there, but it's hidden. And it's maybe in their eyes, in their way of standing, their way of waiting. And so I saw that film, and of course I was especially moved because I lived in Moscow for more than 2 years. And then when I played the Rachmaninoff sonata, those images came to me. And then I had the opportunity through a festival in France called La Ferme du Buisson to try something, because I thought maybe I could do something with that emotion I felt. I don't want to leave it just like that. And so I tried to work with those images and the music. And that's how the project was born. D'Est en musique. So I added to that film, that is not the film, the whole film, but an editing of the film, because a musical program that happens at the same time, as if it was giving words through music to those people. There's no sound in the film.
Chantal Ackerman is somebody you worked with also for Chant Juif, and I wondered if you could tell us something more about her and her filmmaking and what it is that the two of you really have in common that makes you such excellent partners in vision and in music.
Probably it's related to what I said about her way of filming, and probably also a relation to the l'imaginaire, imagination. And she is a filmmaker that will never impose you what to think or what to feel. Never. She wants a face-to-face, the image and the person who looks at it, and something happens that she doesn't want to decide. It's an emotion that comes, I would say, from the side. And that's in that I think we are very close, and that's why we worked so often together.
Yes, because Chant Juif was originally conceived for her film.
Yeah, but that's a bit different. It's through that I through the demand of Chantal to make that research for a film, that I entered in that repertoire.
So what about the repertoire on the Destin Musique project?
Oh yeah, so it's Rachmaninoff, Vocalise, Sonata, and then Schnittke, and then Janacek, a transcription of a Moravian poem for cello solo, and then there's the Schnittke sonata that is really goes in crescendo in the sensation of pressure of the government on the people, even with through l'architecture, those huge buildings like l'architecture stalinienne. Je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de Français dans la salle. And so it goes in a sort of crescendo of tension, and then finally at the end, I don't know if I should say it because it's a surprise. I won't say it, but something happens at the end that is lighter.
So really your remit for East is the whole of Eastern Europe as used to be.
Yes, it's even the light in the streets you won't see anymore. It's finished. That yellow, white light, the way they are dressed, the way they think about we don't know what. This is a world that probably almost disappeared already. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. There are a number of transcriptions as well on the CD that's going with this, aren't there? Like the Rachmaninoff Vespers.
So that's another. I understand you. It's complicated because so much comes from the East with me. So there's Chant d'Est and d'Est en musique. D'Est en musique is the one with the film where there's the Rachmaninoff sonata, Schnittke sonata, and Chant d'Est. I get mixed up myself. Chant d'Est is another one with more transcriptions, and it's with a chamber orchestra, and it's Mitteleuropa. It's not the same region. It's something I have done about this part of the world where there's so many countries, so many different cultures and languages in a so small little piece of earth. And it's how every part of that big part tried to keep its identity through the language. And I let's say I did that voyage through music, because in music it's of course language, exactly like tongue language for words.
Yes, I'm slightly fixated on that CD because I put it on and heard my favourite piece of Dochnani, and I was actually moved to tears. It was so beautiful. I recommend it very, very highly. I'm sure it'll be available at King's Place, or possibly, I don't know, even here. I don't know. I hope so. So again, you've been extending the cello repertoire with those transcriptions.
Yeah, through Chant d'Est a lot, because now there's that Dornani as the Ruralia Hungarica. That is an incredible piece, because Dornani himself, he wrote it, of course, and then he played it for piano, and then he said, oh no, not for piano, it's better for violin and cello and piano. Heifetz played it, but he played only one movement on the 3 movements, and then some others played 2 movements out of 3, but nobody plays the 3 movements. And now I did a version for cello and string orchestra, and so it moves. And it goes from one instrument to the other, and it's a very beautiful piece, especially the andante à la zingaresca.
Exactly, yeah.
And there's a Martineau piece and Prokofiev, and this wonderful work by Frank Kravzik about the Janacek Moravian melodies. So yeah, it's really like walking on a path, as Janacek did with his little daughter that he lost.
Yes, the overgrown path.
Yes.
Yes. So where are you going to go from here? What comes next? In terms of your next project.
Oh, I
Is
thought
there something
after
you can
our
tell us
meeting.
about? Yeah. No, we can eat after this, but after these projects.
Oh yeah,
we would
I
like to know
think
what you'll-
many things, but probably what I should quickly talk about is this sensation that I want to do a triptych. The first was Chant Juif, the second Chant d'Est, the one that you like, and I want to do the Mediterranean region, the countries that are around the Mediterranean, and do the same sort of journey, very subjective, but completely in another geographical place. And so I began some researches and work, and I think that will be the third and last chapter of the triptychs.
Great. What else is coming up for you after King's Place?
Lisboa, I go, and then I'm bad at remembering what I'm doing. And then what comes? Then I go to Metz, play Haydn concerto, and then I go somewhere else, play the Tchaikovsky, and then we do Vita again, and traveling.
Yeah, so you're very much interweaving your own projects with the great concertos and recital repertoire that's already there.
Yes.
Yes. Now, I believe we have an extract of the film.
Yes, so the little extract that we will see is at the end of d'Est, the film, and I chose that because I'm especially, it's not typical of the film, because as I said, it's more in the streets and many people, but here it's like this man alone could be any of us, and I will play what I chose to play with him while he's waiting, drinking. Well, you'll discover. And then there is another un autre plan, another, comment on dit un plan dans le cinéma? Yes, that yeah, another shot, thank you. That begins, and I'll play just the very beginning of the Schnittke Sonata, so you'll feel the change of atmosphere.
it is one thing to talk about these projects, and it's quite another to actually experience them. There are all sorts of areas which are actually incredibly difficult to express in words, but that the combination of music and the image make that absolutely palpable, I think.
Well, it's true that it's better to... Well, the words have their limits. And in the sets that I have imagined for that, there are two ways of doing it. Either when it's a theater that allows us, we play, in fact, behind a black voile, so and the film is projected on that voile, so that there's less light, but still the film is quite visible. But we, Laurent Cabasso, the pianist, and myself, we enter in the image, and we're part of what's happening. And we will do it in King's Place a little bit differently, like again, but in a different way, a triptych, where we will be surrounded by the film. We'll be in the middle, and the film will be going on both sides. And so also we'll be in fact surrounded by all those personages of the film and atmospheres.
Yeah, so you become characters in your own right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So I was wondering if anyone has some questions that they would like to ask Sonia.
Will your next Mediterranean project have any connection with the wonderful last one that you did a few years ago?
It will have probably 2 or 3 common pieces, but I change completely my way of entering in the project, because I don't want a quartet, a string quartet. I want to invent another sound. So I change that. So it will change a lot. Of course, the flavor, the sound, and the form of the project.
I may not be able to see very well, but I would know this voice anywhere. It's very lovely to welcome one of our very finest British pianists to the Institute tonight. This is Imogen Cooper, who has been playing in a duo with Sonia for quite a number of years, and they've made some wonderful recordings together.
Does the mute make the same noise each time in the same place?
Oh, that's a very interesting question. No. It's I can never guess what it will do, and sometimes even it's thrown on the other side of the bridge, and so it doesn't act anymore. So I have to take it back. It's completely imprévisible, and that's also why I like it. I can never know. Sometimes it changes more the high notes, and sometimes the basses more.
Can I ask you something else about the mute?
Yes.
Now that it's been invented and created, have any other composers thought, oh, that's an interesting sound, I'm going to write for it too?
Not at à ma connaissance. I don't know. I don't think so.
Is it something you might encourage them to do in future?
Maybe if it happens that I feel that this sound could be something that could give some, to reinforce the sound of wanted by a composer, I would do so, yes, of course.
It's interesting. It reminds me in many ways of the prepared piano that was first invented by John Cage, but you see these things far less, in a far less widespread way on stringed instruments, I guess because the instruments themselves are so much more delicate than a modern grand piano would
but
be.
In fact, I was thinking a few days ago, I was thinking about that, what I meant when I speak about energy of sound and what Scelsi means and how to explain that. And I was thinking, is the difference between a sound that, for example, tells a story, or just the sound as existing like a sound? And then I saw the images, as you probably all did, of this square Tahrir in Cairo. And there was at one point just the sound of what was happening on the square with no comments. And the sound that I heard there, that means that energy contained of millions of people waiting, this was what I was trying to explain. This is energy of sound. You enter in the center of a sound that can, as Scelsi says, it can destroy, it's so strong, or it can build, it can enlarge, it has an incredible power, that sound, the essence of the sound. And so with everything that happens now, one of the things the most impressive is the sound, not only the images. And I think composers like Scelsi were fascinated by that.
Yeah, it's a wonderful example of how that can build up. It's interesting. I think so many of us are primarily visual people, but if we're primarily oral people, as perhaps you are yourself, I don't know, this whole other dimension comes into play, and it's wonderful to take a moment to think about what can be expressed through sound. I believe it is a wrap. And I will say thank you very, very much to Sonia Vida-Atherton for coming and talking to us tonight and playing her cello and her butte as well. Thank you, Sonia.
Thank you.